Here we have an aerial shot of Philip Tivy and Son nursery, taken around 1985. This image shows the nursery in the height of flower production, with around 16,000 dahlia plants in flower. It was probably taken towards the end of August, when Shrewsbury and Southport flower shows were imminent. A closer look at the beds of dahlias, all in full flower, perhaps taken in September, cutting flowers to take to market and for flower show stands is at its height at this time of year. Eventually the crop will succumb to the elements and the foliage will be turned black by the first frosts of winter. The season now turns from flower production to the hard work of lifting and storing the dahlia tubers. The plants had been supported by the use of substantial wire netting, held intermittently by wooden stakes. All these nets and stakes then have to be separated from the dying foliage and rolled up and put away for storage until the next season begins. Once the nets and stakes have been removed and put away for the winter, the job of digging up the 16,000 dahlia tubers can begin. As our soil was very light, we only ever used spades for lifting. Our thinking was that if any tubers were encountered, then they would be cleanly cut through by the spade, rather than being pierced by the prong of a fork, which may leave damaged tubers, which then could spread damage to other tubers during storage. As the tubers are lifted, they are laid over for a short time to dry out a little. This is obviously dependent on the prevailing weather at the time. As this is normally happening from the end of November to Christmas, they are not left out overnight, however, in case of adverse conditions arising. The stems are then cut off, leaving a couple of inches or so above the tuber. As they are lifted to carry into a protected place, they are turned over to allow any water that may still be trapped in the hollow stems to escape. It is important at this time to ensure the bed label is also transferred with that batch of tubers, as if lost or mislaid, the tubers will then be impossible to identify until they begin to sprout again in the spring. Even then, it is very difficult to identify the different varieties by the foliage only. The batches of roots are now moved into a place which can be kept frost-free. They are given a little amount of space to allow air movement around them. The bed label is also transferred with them. Any severely damaged tubers that are noticed can be removed at this time with a clean cut and the wound be dressed with a fungicide such as yellow sulphur powder. Once all the lifting is done, or as it is progressing, the tubers can be further checked over and laid out in a more organised manner in trays, ready for starting back into growth. They are placed on top of a layer of compost. Again, they can be treated with fungicide as needed, and the identifying label is again put with them. Towards the end of December, the trays of tubers are transferred to where they will be started back into growth. The benches we used had hot water piping underneath, running the length of the bench. This will provide vital undersoil warmth, which will trigger them into growth when the heating is increased. For commercial purposes, the tubers are started back into growth straight after the Christmas break in January. Excessive heat is not required. Only around 50 degrees Fahrenheit or 10 degrees centigrade is normally enough to get them started. As the level of light is very low at this time of year, too much heat would make the new shoots very soft and weak. As soon as the shoots begin to develop, the cuttings for next year's plants can begin to be taken, cutting them off with a very sharp knife or razor blade, so as to leave a small portion of the stem near the tuber. This will encourage more shoots then to develop from the remaining part of that stem. As the season progresses, the number of shoots produced will gradually increase. The cuttings are trimmed down to about 2 to 3 inches in length and are cut off just below a leaf joint or axil. This is important, as apart from helping the cutting to root, it is also at this point that the new tubers will form at the base of the new plant. It is in this area of the leaf joint that the leaf axils contain the ability to form eyes in the tuber, which are essential for the new growth of shoots the following year. If new eyes are not formed in the tuber, it can become blind and fail to sprout the next time. The cuttings are then treated with a rooting powder containing fungicide and hormones, which will encourage the development of roots. They will root without this treatment, however, but it may take longer, so it does help to speed up the process. The cuttings are then placed in trays of either seedling compost or a potting compost with a very low nutrient level, spaced at around 1 to 2 inches apart. Again, the label is important for identification. The cuttings are immediately given a good watering, after which it is vital that they never dry out, and use of a misting unit for commercial purposes is almost essential. A bench full of cuttings in the process of rooting. There must be thousands of new plants in this image. After 14 to 16 days, the cuttings will start to show the production of new roots. This process is aided by under-bench heating and constant damping of the leaves. They will root without the luxury of mist unit, but the former does make the job more uniform, and roots will form in a shorter time. The freshly rooted cuttings can now be potted on into small pots using a compost with a higher level of nutrients. We would use only 7 cm pots, as we were dispatching many of these plants via the postage system, but for amateur use 10 cm pots may be a better option. The newly potted on plants becoming established in their new positions, in batches of each variety, clearly labelled. Some of the cuttings produced each year are left in their pots for the whole season. These plants will form little tubers in the pot, known as pot tubers. This is a way to ensure that stock of each variety is kept in safe conditions, just in case there are any hiccups when digging up the field-grown tubers. These little pot tubers are sometimes sold as such, but the ones kept until the following season can be repotted to make more substantial plants quicker. This shows the pot tubers saved from last year being repotted into fresh compost to give them a new start. As the new plants begin to grow, they will normally send up one central shoot. This will dominate the plant, becoming very strong, and will prevent other shoots from developing. To prevent this from happening, the growing point should be removed when the plant gets to around 4 to 5 inches tall. Here is a plant that has had the growing tip removed, which is now showing signs of side shoots beginning to emerge. In a little while, the new shoots will begin to make progress. Sometimes there are only 2 shoots that will start to grow from the next set of leaf axils, down from the pinch. Other times, however, there could be 4 or even 6, depending on the stage of the plant at the time of pinching. The fewer shoots that are allowed to develop will make the resulting stems and flowers stronger. At some point through the winter or early spring, a good layer of farmyard manure is spread over the field, and this is ploughed in when conditions allow. Shortly before planting time, which will be normally from the middle to the end of May, the ground is rotavated to level it out and break up any clods. After the tubers have produced enough cuttings, they can be replanted. They never seem to be as vigorous as a newly rooted cutting, however, but may produce flowers slightly earlier, but also they will tend to fade more quickly. When replanting old tubers, it is preferable to split them into separate pieces. You must make sure there is a sign of growth on each piece that is separated. A tuber without any sign of growth may be blind and fail to sprout at all. The new cuttings and split or repotted pot tubers can be replanted from April under cover or during May outside. This shot shows the new plants going in. We have laid out a black polythene ground cover to suppress weeds. Care should be taken, however, with this, as slugs and snails can be harboured beneath the sheet. It also shows the nets that we use for supporting the plants as they grow. 8-inch squares with 5 squares across the bed, making a 40-inch wide bed. The new little plants are watered in, the plants being sprayed over, possibly with an insecticide for aphids and or caterpillars. The plants begin to make strong growth. Note, we have only planted every other square and only the centre 3 rows in each bed. This is too close together for normal growing. In a garden or allotment, about 2 feet apart is the normal. We do, however, reduce the number of shoots that are allowed to develop on each plant. As the plants get taller, the netting is raised to keep them supported. An initial fertiliser dressing of a general type is first applied at planting, such as Growmore, which has evenly balanced nutrients. When the flowering stems begin to form buds, a further dressing of a high potash fertiliser is applied and watered in. Also, it is time to begin to disbud the flower stems. The shoots will have an apical bud at the top, then lower down at each leaf joint there will be further buds developing. To get stronger stems and flowers, removal of the buds from the next set of leaf axils is vital. We also would remove the buds from the second set of leaf joints down from the apical bud. This makes the resulting stems very strong and the flowers vibrant. The flower stem showing the buds removed from both the first and second sets of leaf axils down from the apical bud. Here we have Philip Tivy checking out the results of all the hard work with the variety Symbol, which is a medium semi-cactus variety and is very popular on the amateur show bench. Different varieties of cactus type dahlias. Around again to mid-August and the beds outside are again in full flower. Here we have Chris Tivy holding up the golden chalice for the best display of dahlias at Shrewsbury Flower Show. Philip Tivy here giving a last check over of our display of dahlias at the RHS Halls in London.